I'm talking with a strength coach working with a soccer team. I think I might get some real negative emails in the soccer world if I don't ask you about what you do for conditioning. I want to know, how important is conditioning at the highest level? I mean, how much time and emphasis are you putting into it? Are you just evaluating the tempo of practice? Are you using technology to aid in making sure that those guys are well rested and also being able to train at a certain level? I mean, soccer is one of those big sports that's tracking distances covered along with heart rate and heart rate averages. I mean, what are some things that have really given you an advantage as a conditioning coach to help your team?
Well, with soccer particularly, let's be honest, conditioning is probably the most important factor of what they need or what they're going to use on a day-to-day basis and for their sport. The beauty of it, or I guess the challenge of working with soccer, though, is that when you're in the private sector, you just have your personal training clients or you just have your all-season clients. For the most part, all they're doing is their strength, their movement, their conditioning. They're not, in a sense, practicing and going through their actual sport-specific practice or routines here. The big challenge with soccer, though, is that at the end of the day, you have to manage what you're doing from the strength and conditioning side with what they're actually getting from the practice side. And I think that's one of the hardest things, I guess, in a sense, to get used to, because you're coming from the mindset of, oh, we just got to condition, run, and you're not actually factoring in how much of that they're actually doing with practice. So with soccer, I think the biggest thing that I had to learn or adjust to is the fact that I need to know what they're actually getting from a practice standpoint. With our different blocks, what intensity, how much volume, what's the duration of each drill, and are they already getting the effects that we need from those drills to the point where I don't need to necessarily just have them go out and run on the side or extra. So understanding the actual game of soccer, how we're setting up practices, the different drills, how having a drill where you're allowed to take 3 touches compared to 1 touch affects, in a sense, your intensity that you're going at in that drill. And from that intensity, you're also getting how much of an actual conditioning effect they're taking on. You take an hour and a half practice, for the most part, they're probably getting the conditioning that they actually need. So do you need to go out and run them for another 20, 30 minutes afterwards? Absolutely not. So being able to actually manage the practice loads, the practice volume, the practice duration, practice intensity, for the most part, it's going to get you to where you need to be with these guys anyway, to be able to withstand the demands that they're going to need for one game for, in a week, for a month, for an entire season. So I would say 4 years ago, looking back on it now and where I started with soccer, I think that was the hardest thing or the biggest thing I needed to adjust to. And now, seeing where I'm at now, knowing that that's a very important tool or aspect or thing that you actually need to know so that you can then balance the rest of your program off of that. We'll look at everyone individually. We do have guys on heart rate monitors every day. We get a live feed with that. So from that, I have an idea of where they're at, basically in the middle of a practice, at the end of a practice, knowing if they're, in a sense, hitting their numbers, if they're hitting their intensity, if they're getting the recovery that they need. And from that, what we'll do is then, we'll look at the team as a whole or look at the guys individually and determine if, maybe a day or 2 a week they need a little bit of extra, maybe if we need to actually cut some guys. Technology's been great. It's been very important. Is it the end-all to what we're doing? No, but it is a great resource that you can have to basically take what you're seeing with your eyes and now actually probably put, at least some type of a number behind it to confirm what you're seeing. So if you see a guy dogging it or slacking on the field, at least now we can probably go back to those heart rate numbers or to some of that distance covered and actually be like, hey, we have something to back up what we're seeing, so that when we sit down with that guy and be like, you know what, you're not doing what we need you to do. We need you to do some extra fitness. We need you to do some extra work. These are the reasons why, we actually can stand by what we're saying with them. And vice versa, if we know a guy's really pushing it out there, his load's extremely high, his heart rate's high, he's not recovering, we know that, hey, maybe we need to cut this guy down a little bit, take out a couple minutes of the drill here and there so that ultimately we're not overtraining that guy so that he can, be ready to play, every Saturday night when we have a game. By far, conditioning is probably the biggest, component of what I have to deal with on a day-to-day with soccer, and it's more just the checks and balances of it, seeing where guys are at and making sure that ultimately, come game night, they're as fresh and as fit as possible. So being able to balance that volume with the guys is probably the most important part of my job.